Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, and this is another great episode of what it is you can be doing to work on your business to, in fact, get paid what you're worth offering quality accounting services. It's within these various episodes that we cover topics ranging from marketing, selling, client onboarding, technology, mindset, and so many other things that we need to be aware of as we run and operate our successful accounting businesses. Now, this is a podcast where we actually have guests on each and every week to invite them to share with us their perceptions, their expertise, so that we can actually consider their thoughts as we're running and operating our companies. And today's going to be no exception. I happen to have a great guest on the show. I've had a conversation with him in the past and felt this would be a topical thing for us to discuss here today. It's Gabriel, and I'm going to say the name here, Gabriel Stiritz. Did I say that right?
Gabriel Stiritz.
Stiritz, I came darn close. That was good. So Gabriel, he serves as the CFO for Sanford Law Firm, and he is an experienced entrepreneur with a unique professional background that includes photography, fundraising, and operations. Gabriel's graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design in 2011 with a BFA in photography of all things. He subsequently spent 8 years working for and at New City Kids, a nonprofit headquartered in New Jersey. And then at the same time, Gabriel's role spanned communications, events, major gifts, and operations within that organization. During his time with them, he also grew it from $900,000, just under $1 million in revenue, to $3.5 million in annual budget, serving 5 locations in 3 cities. And after serving as their operations director for the New City Kids, Gabriel joined the team at Sanford Law Firm as CFO. So first of all, welcome to the show, Gabriel.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I think your perspective here is going to be very insightful to our listeners as accounting professionals, because you're likewise in the service-oriented industry. And one of the things that I want to really draw attention to is the fact that you're not an accountant. And if I understand it right, you're also not a lawyer. Isn't that right?
That's correct. Neither a lawyer nor an accountant.
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of a fun discussion, because the first thing I want to do is your journey is taking you all over the map. How do you become CFO of a law firm?
Yeah, I mean, I still tell people that I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I've found myself in multiple industries at this point, and every time I'm just delighted by the joy of learning something new. I think what ties everything together for me is that the work that I've been able to do itself has been meaningful and interesting. And so my job title is CFO. I'm sure that your listeners are familiar with the EOS methodology. Yeah. I'm really the integrator for the law firm. So that's the true core of my job is integrator for the law firm. We have about 38 people here. So I manage the leadership team internally.
Now, I was quick to say yes to the EOS question. Why did you explain it? Because I'm presuming some of the listeners do not know what EOS is.
Yeah, EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a business framework for running your business. It's really aimed at $1 to $10 million organizations, but it can certainly be scaled up or down accordingly. And it's really a comprehensive way of managing a company. It's absolutely phenomenal. I think it's really life-changing. But I didn't answer your original question, which is how do you become a CFO of a law firm? And the opportunity opened up for me. It was really more of not just a career move, but I'm from Arkansas, live in Little Rock now, and I was living up on the East Coast in New Jersey at the time when this job position came open. And it was a chance to move to be closer to family and try something totally different than the operations and finance role that I held with the nonprofit.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I put so much emphasis on this is the fact that as accounting professionals, I think we can identify with this. It's the fact that our career paths sometimes just don't take us the way we thought. And for many, as accounting professionals, they didn't necessarily start in the accounting field with the intent of being an entrepreneur, starting their business, running their business, dealing with so many things that are non-accounting related as they run a company. And I think that's something that they could identify with you and experience, because this EOS that you're describing, there's some definitely best practices in there that you've brought into the firm. What are some of those things that you feel have been so helpful as you've been running that operation?
Well, I think one, as a business owner, this is just true across the board, and we could talk more about this, but I think that every business today is first customer service, second, it's technology, and then third, it's whatever you're doing functionally to serve people. And so really there's so much that broadly applies across all industries. And EOS is similar to that. It's really industry agnostic. And the principles in there that every page of the book is useful. It's hard to draw out specifics, but I would really speak to a lot of it is about communication, because communication is the basis for so much of trust. And so if you're not communicating well, you don't have trust. And if you don't have trust, you're just not going to be able to work well as a team. One of my favorite authors, Patrick Lencioni, that's really his whole platform is about trust and communication as a leadership team that's going to flow out to the rest of the firm. And so the one thing that I would say that has made a difference for us more maybe than anything else is the meeting rhythms from the EOS methodology. And if you're a solopreneur, I get it. You don't have to have those meeting rhythms. But as soon as you have more than one person, you have to figure out how you're going to communicate. And meetings really are the heartbeat, the rhythm of any organization, and it's well functioning.
So I'm going to just run with that. The meetings, obviously, the meetings are where the communication, the strategy comes in. It's where the collaboration occurs. Have you found for your business team a meeting format that actually has been helpful and successful?
Absolutely. So I liken it to a drum beat in the sense that you have all of these different pieces of the percussion. You don't use them all at the same time, but the meeting rhythms that we've built in for the firm on the long end, you have an annual 2-day retreat where you're talking about longer term vision and strategy and the market landscape. Quarterly, and we're actually doing one Monday. We have our quarterly planning session with the leadership team where we're looking at our quarter goals, our 90-day long, EOS calls them rocks, and how are we moving toward our annual strategy. And then maybe my favorite one is the daily huddle, and we do this on Zoom. People are all over the place. We're a hybrid team, but we meet every single day, 7 minutes as a leadership team. We do a daily huddle. Some people call it a stand up. Before anything else happens for the day, we get on the same page. What's going on? Is anyone stuck on anything? And to me, that keeps our team so tightly knit that we're talking about where we're stuck at most every 24 hours. That we're getting so much more done than before we started doing that. I just love the daily huddle.
I like this. This is, I think, very helpful to the listeners. So I'm going to add to that, and I'm curious to see if you had any additional thoughts after I'm finished. But I'd like to add to this whole meeting discussion a little bit more of what we do. We also have a retreat. We have an annual retreat where we actually assess what's happened in the year and plan for the new year. We do a 1 and a 3-year plan. And it's, I think, in there that you get the collaboration of everyone on the same page of what's the priority, what's the intent, what are the expectations, and we get it down to a numeric value so that we can quantifiably track it. So I think that's helpful. In addition to that, we have an annual company meeting where I give, as the president of the company, a state of the company report and basically highlight things that have gone on in the past year as the successes, challenges we face, what are we doing next year, just to kind of keep everyone on the same page. But at a specific meeting level, there's an agenda flow that we have followed for a while that's really played out well, and it's really begun with the return and report. Typically, meetings end with assignments given, things that are expected. Well, we begin with, give us an update, where are things, what's done, what's taking longer, who needs what tools or what additional things to move things along. The next thing we talk about is topical. What do we need to be talking about that's relevant, that we all need to be aware of? And then from that, are there any actionable items that anyone needs to be delegated? And one of the best practice rules that I've put into place and really resonated with me is if someone is invited to the meeting, then everyone's expected to participate. And my role in facilitating the meeting is to make sure everyone has a chance to share their voice. You can't cower behind something and not be involved. I don't want anyone leaving a meeting feeling, why was I there? I want them to feel as if they always had something to contribute and actually leave with, hopefully, something to do. So any additional thoughts that you'd like to add? Because I think this is a really important topic.
No, Roger, I love the last part that you said, because I think that so many leaders, because you're often having to step in and make decisions, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about decisiveness, because I think that's a real strong value. think that that means the same thing as talking the most or talking the first or talking the loudest. And I love what you said about your role as a leader being a facilitator. And I think that's just incredibly important. That's how I see my role, especially when we're having leadership team meetings, is not to be the one giving information out, but to be drawing out the opinions and the viewpoints of the people on the team, because that's how you make good decisions. And I think that balancing that conversation, pushing down some of the louder voices, bringing out the quieter ones, getting everyone's data out on the table, that's the job of the leader. And then, like you said, at the end, wrapping that up, bringing that to a close, being decisive, making those decisions, assigning out the action items, and then making sure those things are actually followed up on. It's really a facilitation role. That's the way that someone has to facilitate a meeting for it to work well. And I think that for me, that's a large part of doing leadership well. So I just love what you said there. And my favorite book on all of this is Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, who started Pixar, and his perspective on his perspective as a leader in a highly creative company. And look, it doesn't matter that it's Pixar, it's any company, is to find out where the cracks are. Where are the things that as a leader I don't know about? And that requires a lot of listening and a lot of drawing people out and a lot of emotional intelligence. And I think that book was really formational for me. And I would recommend that to anyone who's going to be a leader, to learn the importance of listening and to look for those things, because as leaders, we're always the last to know about anything, right? Like everybody walking down the hall is going to not, whatever it is that they're talking about, that's not going to be the thing that they tell you when you sit down and you get in the meeting. It'll get glossed over unless you really invest that time, like you're saying, to draw people out and to understand what's going on. So I fully agree with all of what you said.
This is wonderful. That Pixar example is a great illustration of it. The way I consider it, and obviously I'd like to think I'm perfect at this, which I know I am not. So let's be real with the fact that I even am struggling to implement my own philosophy. But the whole point is I don't need to pound my chest. Everybody knows who I am in the room. I need to be doing, like you were describing, listening. And it's not that I get to make all the decisions because I can. I want to make the decisions that no one else can. That's why I'm there. And so I need to be drawing out those bits of information that, like you were pointing out, I don't know. I'm the last to know. So what don't I know? What do I need to know? What's on the horizon that's concerning everyone else? This type of discussion really does make for a very informative, well-planned out meeting, simply because things are being learned, decisions are being made. I like this discussion. This is really good.
Roger, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm fascinated. So you talked about the wrap up for your meetings. Is that something that you do for every meeting that you're in? And this is how, and you've trained your team, this is how we wrap up a meeting? Or is that part of some meeting agenda? I'm really curious about that. How does that work?
So I'd like to say it happens in every meeting. I can tell you that it's intended to happen in every meeting. The whole idea is this: if I'm meeting either with a group of individuals or even on a one-on-one, I'd like to presume that the meeting had an intent or purpose, and therefore, if we've spoken, what's come of this? And the best phrase I can use is "therefore what." We've done all this, therefore what needs to happen next? And so I always try to, with whatever topic we've discussed, say, okay, then what's the action item associated with this and who's going to run with it? And my goal in the meeting is I'm never supposed to leave with an action item. Now, it doesn't mean that happens, but the goal is I'm not supposed to be leaving with things to do. Everyone else is. And what I'm trying to do is delegate, and I'm trying to do basically three things: empower them. I want them to feel as if they have purpose in the business. I want them to feel as if they are making a difference, that they're valuable. So I want them to be doing it. Two, it also facilitates training. If someone doesn't have the ability to do something, I'm very interested in giving them the tools, the trainings to accomplish what's being requested of them. So in some instances, it's a growth opportunity. They don't know, and they're going to basically get that opportunity to grow. But the third thing is sometimes things cannot be done by an individual. And so this gives us a chance to team individuals up. Hey, I need you to work with so-and-so. And that's where cross-training will typically happen. This is where you're in a situation where through the delegation, everyone's leaving like they attended a meeting where there was purpose. I left with something I need to do because of it. And now they have something to be accountable for the next time we meet. Hey, I need you to give me an update on this because you left with that. So my whole juggling, if you will, of the attendees is I'd like everybody to leave with something. Now, does that always happen? No. But that's the end of the meeting. At the end of the meeting, what's changing because we've now met together? These things are what's going to be worked on next. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And my follow-up is, so look, technology is only an extension of what we're already doing well. It doesn't supplant the right practices and habits. But do you have any technology that you use to follow up with those action items, to run the incidents for your meetings, or is that all really done, via the meeting structure that you've set up?
So there's really two things. I do have a journal, something that I take notes in so that I can reference back later. That is my least preferred. I'd rather not use it, but I do have it for those moments that I'm not by my computer or something like that. So someplace to capture those momentary type flashes of genius, let's call them. The second thing is we use a production or product management type software. Active Collab is the one we're currently using. And in doing that, we're able to basically have projects, assign out tasks, and manage due dates and provide and collaborate information in there. And so utilizing that, I'm able to see what is still open-ended. We can see what's hitting due dates, what's coming up next. And so using that platform, everyone theoretically has access to it. Now, in an ideal world, everything would end up in that platform. Some things do get emailed back and forth and never make it into there. Some things are on my notes, and I just have to remember to try and have that conversation. So in an ideal world, I would ultimately have them all in that Active Collab environment. But interestingly enough, there are those situations where it's outside of that. And then the last thing I'd point out is, unfortunately, because we're not all perfect, unfortunately, I have individuals that haven't embraced the Active Collab system. And so there's some reluctance and hesitancy, and we can maybe talk about that later, of how in a company there are those late or slow adopters, those ones that drag their feet and are resistant to change. But that exists, and you have to be delicate as to which things you insist upon and force people to do versus trying to be flexible and let them be the slow adopters. So in that situation, I have to have other means to communicate with those people in the interim. So is that further answering what you were asking?
No, it's fantastic. Yeah, I just love hearing how everyone's systems work in different ways, and no one has the same system because every culture is different, every organization is different.
You're right. It is a cultural thing. And I liked how you said before you asked the question that the technology is not to supplement or replace what's really going on. It's to facilitate or accelerate what you're trying to do. And so oftentimes the systems and processes that we've developed first existed in some other platform, whether it be paper or dry erase board. There's just some other way of doing it. And only once we figured out that process do we try to automate it or try and digitally capture it or duplicate it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that works on a lot of levels. And I even see that nesting, that hierarchy in technology. So we run the firm on Salesforce.
Yeah.
But when someone comes to me with a new feature request or some kind of process, I'll often tell them, look, I just want to do this in Google Sheets until we know exactly what this is, because if we build it in Salesforce, it's never going to change. And your first iteration or my first iteration is not the thing that we're going to end up with. So let's test it with a really low overhead first, and then let's build the final product later once we've really honed that in. And I think that is true for organizational processes as well. So meeting rhythms, task management, all of that. I aim for an iterative approach whenever possible and say, what's the easiest and maybe laziest way of doing this on round one? Because I just know it's not going to be great the first time. So let's not invest so much. Let's try it. Let's figure it out in real life, because it's always different that way. And then build the real system around what we've learned works for us, even acknowledging that that's going to change over time as well.
Oh, yeah. Now, just to kind of complement that, I've had numerous opportunities in my own career and with clients where we're trying to create a process. And for some people, it's a process that's a personal one, that they just have their own individual way of doing things. There's also processes that I've experienced where the process is physical. But my point is before we make it digital and perhaps purchase a software system or whatever, I always like the physical iteration of it. Let's just physically get this out and with like paper or some objects, watch something move through. And it's fascinating to me when you put it into a physical format, what things you learn. Okay, we missed a step here. This has got to do this, then this. And when you do that process that way, it's amazing what kind of input and collaboration you get from everyone else that's involved in the process. There's things that they need that you don't think are important that they'll point out. Well, all of a sudden, when you're finished with this and you use it for some days, weeks, or months, you clearly understand the process that you're trying to now automate. You clearly understand what you're trying to simplify. And all of a sudden, the solution is much more clear than what the salesperson on the other end of the software is telling you it can do. You can ask better questions. You can assess the cost valuation of, is it worth it to now take this thing we've created physically and now do it digitally? There's so many things that become so much more obvious when you've gone through that physical iteration. And so anyways, I've done that so many times, it's ridiculous, but I think it saved me time and money in the long run. And it's something I continue to do with clients as needed. So got a question for you here. You're basically in a position where you're managing the office and you've got a number of insights as to how to best do it. What's a challenge you faced in business as you're running the operations, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, there's there's challenges every day, and there are a couple of examples that came to mind, and I was thinking about your folks. But one of them is hiring. I think this is something that everyone always is struggling with. And when I was early on at Sanford Law Firm, when I came on, it was almost all attorneys, and we really didn't have support staff. And so we were looking to hire our first paralegal. And the question came up is, who are we going to hire? We have a pretty unique practice here and a unique culture. So we're going to go out and try to find someone who's been a paralegal for a long time and hire that person, or are we going to and how are we going to find someone in a market that's pretty small, like Little Rock, where there's just not a huge number of support staff out there that are well trained? And so what we did instead is we went and we identified what were the actual skills in the position, not what was the job title, but what are the skills. And so instead of being caught up on what's the name of the job, we went with what are we looking for in that person, and went out and found someone who had just graduated college, but who had the requisite skills, and then took a long time training that first person. I'd say 2 or 3 months, just really nailing that job position. And it really paid out because that paralegal, she's still with us 3 years later, and she's actually one of our leadership team. She's managing a team of 8 paralegals now, and she's just absolutely fantastic. And so, I think that the takeaway for me is that, it's often really easy to get caught on, well, what does it look like other people are doing, and try to do that. But we did more of the kind of the design process that you were talking about, which is deconstructing that and figuring out actually what is it that we need and what is the most effective way of getting to that place. And I think that really worked. It really paid off. And also it was much cheaper than going out and hiring someone who'd been a paralegal for years. And also that probably wouldn't have worked out because our processes are unique to our law firm, and we had to figure out how to design this position really from scratch for us. And so that was one that really stood out to me as I was thinking about one of the challenges that we faced, especially early on in my tenure.
I can relate to what you're describing because oftentimes as I'm speaking to accounting firm owners, there's this discussion that will come up where they're questioning, in hiring the next person, do I hire based on experience and skills, or do I look for that cultural fit, and with that, the ability to find someone that's loyal and teachable that I can train the skills? And unfortunately, the conversation goes both ways. I mean, I hear both sides of the argument of which they prefer. The one thing I can say as part of this whole thing is, with the unemployment rate as it is so low, so many people are struggling to find quality staff, that what they start to do is say, you know what? If I can find someone that's dependable, loyal, that's eager, that's excited, that I can incorporate into the culture, I can train them. And in training them, they will quickly adopt more responsibilities and in doing so become more valuable to me. Hence, I'd be willing to pay them more. And you can find a very loyal employee over time that has the skills simply because you've chosen to invest in them. Imagine you've taken someone and you've trained them, given them a profession, a skill set. Their loyalty to you could be far greater than the individual who comes in with that skill set and feels that they can leave and go somewhere else with that same skill set versus someone that you gave the skill set to, you helped train and maybe even paid for that training. You gave them loyalty and responsibilities. They're now more indebted to you, and therefore you get that greater retention and loyalty from the employees. So I think that's akin to what you were just describing. Is that a fair kind of iteration of that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that you've hit it. And there are certainly circumstances in which you need to bring someone in who's fully trained already. But I think that what it's easy to overlook is that regardless of what background someone has, they have to learn your processes, your culture, your way of doing things. And so no one's going to come in and just be ready to go on day one. And so there is a learning curve no matter what. And I think a lot of times the benefits of finding someone who's just great, or just a great cultural fit, even if they can't, are coming from a different industry, may be underrepresented when you look at someone who has a fantastic resume and you're like, man, I just bring him in. I don't even have to train him. And then you realize, well, actually, this person may not be a great cultural fit. And then over the long run, that person has a lower ROI than someone who takes a little bit more effort up front.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good. Let me change gears on you. I'm curious if you have a thought or a perspective on this. Many of the people that we're working with, many of the people that listen into the podcast happen to be obviously the owners of the accounting business. The unique thing is, and this is a term or a name that we came up with years ago here, so it's not going to be in Webster's dictionary, but it's that of being an accountrepreneur. It's the marrying of the skill set of accounting and the entrepreneur spirit and drive. And I was just curious, do you have any thoughts on the difference between working for a company versus running your own business, such as maybe having advice for an entrepreneur?
I mean, I think that it's massively different. Although to the person who's entrepreneurial, I think that working in a business, you still see a lot of what it means to run a business. I clearly remember very early on in my professional career when I just saw all the component pieces of the organization working together as those pieces and realized, like, I don't think I'm ever going to really be inside a business. I'm going to have to be the guy who's working on the business. And so I think that when you step out on your own, though, the thing that you face that's so different is just the brutal headwinds that you're there and there's nobody else shielding you from the external forces of the world. And that's scary. And I am in the process of launching a software company in addition to running the law firm here. And so I'm feeling both of those at the same time. Like, I have this team here at Sanford Law Firm and I work for Josh and I'm his integrator, and it's great. There's this camaraderie. And then stepping out on my own on the software side, it's like walking outside into cold winter wind and you just feel the blast of the air on your face. And it's like, that's it. It's me and the whole world. And there's an excitement about that too, because of the really unlimited possibilities and the potential and the opportunity there. But it really is very, very different. And so there's things to love about both of them. But when you start to run a business, it just becomes really clear that you just start to see all the pieces kind of taken apart and then you put it back together because you're doing so much of it yourself.
What I hear you describing is something I've experienced, and I'm sure many can relate to, where intellectually it's one thing to say, okay, this is obviously what you do. This is the next step. And it's giving advice without that experience. And then when you actually experience it, it's a whole new thing because of the emotions associated with it. I'll give you a great example. For years, just taught logically the principle that paying taxes is just the sign of success. Paying taxes is just something that you inevitably do because that's what's owed because of the successes you've experienced. And Granted, you can apply and implement various tax saving strategies, legal ones that you can take to try and supplement or circumvent your tax liability, and all that's great and dandy. But when you write the check, when you actually write out the check because you have had a great year, that's a different experience. And I have to pay homage to the fact that early on in my career where I was doing business coaching, I was working with some business owners that I might be familiar with writing a $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 check for taxes. And you just basically say, oh, yeah, it's the same thing when you write a $100,000, $500,000 check. It's just taxes, right? It's a sign of success, that badge you wear because you did well. Well, write the $100,000 check and tell me if you still feel the same way. I mean, it's just another experience when you basically have that interconnection of what logically makes sense and the emotion tied to actually doing what makes sense. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one thing to think about it, and then you step out there and it just becomes real. And then conversely, I think one of the coolest things for me is that's kind of like the stripping down, and you're out there exposed to the elements. But then when I start to present that business to other people and they have the inverse experience where for me, it's like, I'm just this guy and I invented this business name and I'm pretending that I know what I'm doing and all, right? Because that's how you feel. And then they look at it and they're like, oh, well, obviously this is real and it's great. And, I'll hire you, I'll pay you for this thing. And to them, it's this solid object. And you're kind of looking out through all the bars of this building that you're building, and you see every single piece, and they're looking at it and they're seeing a solid structure. To me, that's the greatest moment when you're like, wow, someone sees something. Like, I have really redefined reality in a way, and they believe in this vision. It's real to them. I love that. I mean, to me, that's one of the core components of joy that I get from being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, what you're describing is something that I address when I'm doing my sales trainings. One of the things that I think commonly happens in sales is you get very excited about the product or service you're selling. It's very natural to, in your own mind, understand its worth, and you're just like, this totally makes sense, and people are going to spend money on it. It's another thing to go out and actually pitch it to someone, ask for their money, and after rejection upon rejection, there is this moment when somebody actually says to you, oh yeah, I'll pay you for that. Here's my credit card. And you're like, holy cow, someone gets and sees the value in what I've been portraying. And you were obviously sold on it days, weeks, months earlier. You got it, and that's why obviously you took the job or started selling that product or service yourself. It's another thing when somebody validates you and says, no, I get it. Yeah, I'll pay you for this. Here's my credit card. That euphoria is so amazing. And it's taking it from the logical side of, yeah, people will pay for this. It makes sense. There's a good valuation there. And it's to the emotional side of someone looking you in the eye, validating you and saying, yeah, I see worth in what you're offering. In fact, here's money for it. Two totally different experiences.
It's life-changing. I love it.
Yeah, this is great. All right. I do need to ask, in your experience and so forth, have you worked with a coach, a mentor, someone that's been influential in your journey?
I've had several. Some of them, I would say, very, very short, and some of them much longer relationships that I'm still in now. But the first real boss that I had was the founder of the nonprofit I worked for, and I worked with him for 8 years, and absolutely consider him a mentor. Learned so many different things, but as the founder and the founder of a nonprofit that was privately funded, I learned, going back to what you said, that sales part, that you have to go out, you have to ask. And I think that if there's one thing that you just have to be able to do as an entrepreneur, you're just not going to make it. You have to be able to make the pitch. You have to be willing to get out there and ask. If you listen to one of the greatest podcast episodes, in my opinion, of all time, Guy Raz interviewing Sarah Blakely about how she started Spanx. It's just a story about someone who didn't give up, who just kept asking until the answer became yes, until the door opened. Now she's one of the largest billionaires in the country. But that's, to me, what I learned from him, seeing him as the founder, going out and making these pitches to donors to say, hey, come join this vision, come be a part of this. And we weren't even selling anything that they were going to get in return. And so really, to me, that's the purest form of making the sale and the pitch, is when someone just latches onto the vision and is willing to give money toward that. And so getting to go along with him on those fundraising calls and being a part of raising the money toward the organization, man, I wouldn't trade that for anything. And he just showed me what it takes to be able to do that, to be unafraid of doing that, to put in the time and the effort it takes to get someone on board. So that's one of the things that and he was also not afraid to ask big. Like, don't be afraid. Don't pull your punches. Ask for the thing that you know you need, that you know is going to take your organization to the next level. Don't be afraid of that, because people want the big pitch. And even if they say no, it's not a personal no. There's so many reasons why people say no, but more often than not, they're going to say yes.
You know, what's fascinating about this is I speak of 5 keys to success, and the very first one is passion. And it's very akin to what you were describing. And I've heard her story regarding Spanx, and I've had the opportunity to be with her, not with her, but be when she spoke on stage of her story. And there's a tenacity, this perseverance that comes when people are successful that I've defined as passion, that they just push through those things that are obstacles where people are turning them away. And I think you can find so many examples of that are very inspiring, from authors that submit their publications and their transcripts and get rejected time and time and time again. And then lastly, it's the J.K. Rowling that actually hits it out of the park with, Harry Potter. It's Rocky with Sylvester Stallone going from producer to producer, studio to studio, and eventually somebody saying, okay. And it's having that tenacity to actually push through all of this, because at the end of the day, you have the conviction, and oftentimes it's that they buy. It's probably less what the product or service is. It's more they can just see in you that hunger. And I was just watching Shark Tank yesterday, and there was a valuation given, and one of the sharks ended up doing an investment. And once the investment was done and the person leaves the stage, one of the other people said, you realize that the success that this person has is more COVID related. It was a business that really took off during the COVID years. And they were saying, once COVID's over, this has a high likelihood of just spiraling out of existence. And he said, that may be the case, but what I just bought was her, because I can see in her that she's going to go places. And I know with her, I can make things happen. And it's like, okay, that's a perspective of what we're talking about here. Would you agree?
I completely agree. And as the entrepreneur, you can't ever delegate that to anyone else, because your team's never going to rise above the level of passion and perseverance that you have. You set that pace. You're the one who's always leading the charge in that area. And then people will respond to that and follow you, both externally, your customers, your suppliers, your funders, but also internally, your employees. And so to me, that's one of the, like you said, it's one of the core keys to success. One of the core pieces of leadership is being persistent and just not giving up, and also not losing your passion at the same time, right? Like you have to have the passion while you're being told no over and over.
Yeah, the way I've described it is you're the Energizer Bunny, and your team and your clients, for that matter, they derive their energy from you. And I make it the example I give is when you walk into the office every morning, people are paying attention to how you're coming in. If you're coming in energetic, high, you're passionately saying hello to everyone on the team. Hey guys, good morning. It's great to be here. This is going to be great. People are like, okay, things are good. I can tap into that energy. It's going to be a good day. But you walk through that front door and you avoid people. You don't make eye contact. You're obviously downtrodden. Something's wrong. There's something weighing on you. Everybody gets somber. Everybody's like, crap, what's going on? What's just happened? You set the tone. And that's one of the things that I think true good leaders realize is they've got to be on their A game all the time. And there's a whole nother discussion about staying on the A game, re-energizing yourself to be that Energizer Bunny. But really, at the end of the day, it's just like you were saying, like I guess we're both discussing, is we bring that to the table. So
yeah, but I think that's also, the challenge there for me, and I'll throw another book recommendation, which is Relentless Solution Focus by Jason Selk. He's a sports psychologist, and I got a chance to hear him speak recently, but he talks about that mindset where you're just never giving up. And there's ways to train your brain to do that, to where instead of wallowing in that anxiety or misery, whatever it is, always refocusing on what's the one thing I can do, what's the one step I can take forward, and shifting that mindset. But I think the challenge for me is, especially as someone who's really data driven, is not remembering that people are looking at me as a leader to know how they should feel. Like that, people look to other people to know how they should feel, like you're saying. And to me, that honestly, that seems silly sometimes, even though I do the same thing. I look to others as well. But it's true. And that's a challenge to remember that all the time. You are being watched, and people are taking their temperature off of your emotional temperature.
Yep. This is so good. This has been amazing as a conversation. So I'm going to change gears on us. Obviously, as accounting professionals, we take pride in the numbers that we produce for our clients, the numbers that we're creating, the reports we're generating, and trust that they're being used for business purposes to help the company, the clients that we work with. I'm curious, how do you use the accounting information? What's important and valuable to you as you're running the business?
Man, accounting, you can't overstate the importance of having a good accountant on your team, because you can get everything else right. But if you're not getting your cash flow, if you're not getting your books right, you don't have a business. A business ultimately is built on your numbers. And so for me, having a good accountant, that's a business partnership more than it is just someone who delivers, a set of reports that you don't read every month. Like, to the accountant, I'm looking to them for advice, for input, and that's a valuable part of the team. So the recruitment process, the chemistry there, those are all really important to me. Finding someone who can be a thought partner with me, who's aligned around the vision of the company, where we're going, the direction, and can help navigate those challenging accounting pieces as well.
This is perfect. I'm curious, do you have any key performance metrics that you use or look at in your business, numbers that are important to you as you're running the company?
Yeah, both accounting and non-accounting. High level, we have a scorecard for the business, which are the 14 metrics that we have identified as core leading indicators for the health of the business. And that's top of the scorecard. That's going to be marketing, leads. Bottom of the scorecard is revenue. So it's really the whole funnel from a time perspective. And so those KPIs, that's what we're looking at, and we do it all hands. So our whole firm meets every Friday, and we do a scorecard review. Really believe in that transparency, so people know exactly where we are. We color code red, yellow, green, depending on if we're on track to hit those numbers, and then everyone knows across the firm how we're doing. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's really important not to manage people by yelling at them when you're worried and afraid and patting them on the back when you're excited, but to present them with the information so that they know how well they're doing, and then they can manage toward those things themselves. And then you can focus your leadership on more important things than getting stressed out and causing a bunch of grief when the numbers are down, and then kind of ignoring it when the numbers are good. Like, that's just not good leadership. That's just all over the place. And so I think the scorecard and those rhythms really help drive it home. And you have to combine that with storytelling, because metrics alone don't drive people's behavior. But when you combine that with our firm culture of, we do shout outs around our core values. So, hey, you did really well this week on an effort. You did great on the victory side. You combine that with a scorecard, with metrics, and I think that's a really potent combination.
So I'm going to kind of summarize what you just said, because I think this is hugely important, and we definitely don't have enough time to address it. But with those KPIs, what I was hearing is not only do you have leading and lagging indicators that are within the business, you've got things that you're watching that are going to indicate what kind of successes are on the horizon, but you also have those lagging indicators that clearly define this is what we accomplished. You also sound like you're having individual KPIs. So there's certain things that are expected of individuals. You've got your team, company type KPIs that you're able to watch. And I loved how you were actually doing the stoplight approach, where it's the red light, yellow, green light. You can clearly see, okay, these things we don't need to talk about too much, only because of the fact that we can put our attention on the things that need attention. And then lastly, you can celebrate those things that are in the green and basically give accolades and recognition where it's due. So there's a lot in there. And just if you implement that alone in a business, in any setting, you're going to find huge results, simply because people, they like the praise, the recognition, they like the dashboard, the fact that it's publicly known. There's so many elements to that philosophy. I'm just tickled that you actually shared that, and we were able to get that into the conversation today. Is there anything more you'd like to add to that before we wrap that up?
No, you just did a great job summarizing it. I'm sorry. I feel like I just spun out of control for a minute. So thank you for bringing it back down to earth.
No. You did it spot on. I'm glad I could compliment what it was you had shared. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap up our conversation here today, and in doing so, come back to you, Gabriel, to get just a closing thought. But before I begin with that summary, I want to actually encourage our listeners to go to the episode description. In the episode description, we've got a great offer here, and it's where you can learn what it is you can do to be a profit and growth expert, literally offering to your clients these types of services where you're going in and helping them address the things that they need to work on their business. And it's in this process that you're going to take accounting to a whole new level as you're starting to now get into the space of offering quality CFO and advisory services. And it's where you're actually helping them address things related to culture, as we've discussed today, KPIs, as we were mentioning, and so very much more. So go to the episode description, find out more what it is you can do to offer these quality services in addition to the accounting and tax that you're perhaps providing as a quality CFO and advisor, and at the same time, see what it is you can do to add more value to the relationships that you have, get additional revenues from the streams that you have that are associated to CFO and advisory services, and so very much more. Now, as a summary, I can definitely say this conversation did not disappoint. I knew in the conversation that I had prior with Gabriel that this was just going to be an excellent cross-section of running a business with a lot of nuggets that we can definitely draw from. So that did not disappoint at all. I'm just going to highlight a few of the things that really stood out to me. Definitely this whole idea of meetings, how to have an effective meeting, a productive meeting, things that we can actually do together to ensure that as leaders, we're empowering the people that are attending, having them leave with actionable items, clear expectations, and help them feel a part of what we're doing. I think as a leader, it gives us an opportunity to also look at project management, how we're actually tracking who's responsible for what, is it getting done. We talked about how automating processes can be done in a sense that we first need to know intimately what that process is, perhaps using a paper system or something to actually then understand what we're looking for in a software environment, what we're willing to pay for to maybe systematize that experience. Good discussion there. This discussion that we're having about passion was, I think, very timely in the context of we are the ones that so often in the organization bring in the energy that everyone's relying upon. Are we delivering? Are we charging ourselves to be that person? I think all of that was very helpful. And then this last element here of really when we're looking at the organization, can we really see how we're making a difference? Are we bringing passion to the table and kind of pushing through those difficult times? So many good little nuggets that we're talking about here today. And obviously, when we're talking about running a business, Gabriel gave some good insights. The EOS system that we were talking about earlier was wonderful. So in closing, Gabriel, what final thoughts do you have?
I would say, first of all, that I'm incredibly impressed by your ability to summarize the conversation that we had. That was incredible. My recommendation is this: look, you're a CFO. You're looking to provide value to your clients. The thing that you can always do is be curious. You can ask questions both of your clients to learn their business better and also just of the world around you and all of these different domains that are available. If you're relentlessly curious and you're persistent, you will be successful, and you're going to provide so much more value to your clients than anyone else, because the people that I find are the most valuable are the ones who are always bringing in additional knowledge. So CFO can be anything. You can be a thought partner with your business owner, and the more you know, the more domains that you've experienced, that you've learned about, the more value you're going to bring to them.
Excellent. I love that. That CFO space is what so many are aspiring for, and that was great advice. So thank you for that. So as a wrap up, let me just go ahead and point out a few things here real quickly. First of all, the episode description, be sure to go there for some additional tidbits of information, free resources, as well as becoming a profit and growth expert. I also want to encourage all of the listeners for you to subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already done so, do so, and it will actually help you in the notifications of each and every time we release an episode, which is weekly. And as for past episodes, invite you to listen to those that we've done. We've invited numerous experts in to share with us their insights on various business principles that we need to be aware of as we're running and building the premier accounting firms in our areas. Now, with that being said, obviously, if you would like more information on how you can apply these principles in your business and as well apply these with your clients, feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. or you can visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. Be sure to also check out information regarding GrowCon, our annual event that's done each May to actually help owners of accounting firms work on their business. And with that all being said, always remember, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care, have a great day, and be safe out there.